Wild and Wacky World of Wigs. Wild and Wacky World of Wigs. Focus question. What makes the history of wigs so fascinating? Welcome to the world of wigs. Throughout recorded history, people have had an obsession with hair. From ancient Egyptian culture to modern civilization, wigs have played an important role in this obsession. Wigs have been worn for many reasons, from fashion to social standing. What's a wig? Wigs come in many styles, from full wigs to toppies and extensions. Full wigs cover the entire top and sides of the head down to the neck. Toppies only cover part of the head, from the forehead to the top of the crown and from one ear to the other. The person's own hair is exposed at the back of the head. Extensions are sections of hair or fiber that are attached to existing wigs or natural hair with pins, clips, or glue. Extensions create a fuller or longer look. Wigs can be made from many different things: wool, goat or horsehair, straw or grasses, and even certain kind of plastic such as nylon. For centuries, wigs made from human hair were frequently the most desired way they looked, the most natural. It often took between 6 and 10 heads of human hair to make one wig. Those wigs were also more expensive than the other options, so only very wealthy people wore them. What's in a wig? Until the 1700s, wigs were more often specially made for each individual, which made them too expensive for most. A tight-fitting mesh cap with a fabric base was made to fit the head. The hair or other material was then lipped over the mesh, tied off and attached to the base fabric with beeswax, resin, or glue. When attached, the hair could be styled to match the fashion of the times. In the 1700s, wigs that could fit anyone became popular. A ribbon at the edge of the cap would be tightened for a good fit. Because these wigs could fit many different sizes of heads, the prices dropped and wigs became more affordable. The first wigs. The oldest known wigs date back to 1400 BC in Egypt. Many people in Egypt wore wigs to look like their gods and to cover bald spots. A full head of hair was a sign of strength and health. The Egyptians believed their gods had fancy, thick, braided hair, so they made wigs in the same style. Even back then, the lengths varied. Some wigs were neck length, some shoulder length, and others fell to the waist. All of them were thick, with curls and braids. Some people added extensions to their wigs to make them even fuller. The hair was often set with a light coating of beeswax so it would hold its shape, like modern hairspray. In Egypt, people at every level of society wore wigs. The king and his family wore wigs made of human hair and decorated with ivory and silver. They had hairstylists who maintained their wigs. Wealthy people could afford wigs made from wool or goat hair, while poor people could only afford straw wigs. Wigs in Asia. People in Asian cultures have rarely worn wigs in daily life. However, wigs have been an important part of costumes in Japanese and Chinese theater for many centuries, banishing baldness in Greece and Rome. Wealthy people in two later world empires also wore false hair. The noblewomen of ancient Greece and Rome wore wigs with many braids and curls pinned up. The more braids and the more ornate the style, the higher their social status. The wealthy men and women of Rome wore wigs to hide their bald spots. They favored blonde and red hair. Some Romans kept blonde and red-haired slaves so they would have hair available for their wigs. Some Roman emperors wore wigs as disguise so they could go outside the palace without being recognized. Their goal was to get an idea of that everyday people rarely thought of them. The bold and mighty Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar, Emperor of Rome, 100 to 44 BC, was losing his hair and was not happy about it. First, he tried growing it longer into the back and brushing it over his scalp, but that didn't work. Then his girlfriend, Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, suggested a recipe for hair loss that include ingredients such as ground up mice, horse teeth, and bear grease. This potion didn't work either. Caesar decided that wearing a laurel wreath was easier. The wreath stood for victory in battle. It also proved to be a pretty good cover for his baldness. Fashionable French hair. From the end of the Roman Empire through the next several centuries, wig use lost popularity. Then, in the early 17th century, King Louis the
The 13th.
King Louis XIII, ruler of France, brought wigs back into fashion. At the age of 23, he began to lose his hair. He worried that people in the royal court would have less respect for him if they thought he was going bald. To hide his hair loose, he wore wigs that looked like his natural hairstyle. Many noblemen wanted to look like their king, so they began to wear the same style of wig. During this time period, it was mainly men who wore full wigs. Some added extensions to some women who were losing their hair also wore wigs. Women who had a full head of hair added extensions to their hairstyles. Wigs go over the top. As clothing fashions at the royal courts became fancier, the need for fancier hairstyles also grew. This meant an increased demand for wigs and extensions. Women would style their hair, both real and false, over a frame of pillow on their head to create shapes. Then the style was set with lard, pig fat, and the whole thing was powdered to keep the style in place. Certain styles were 3 feet, 0.91 meters tall. Some women had model shapes placed into their hairstyle. These styles were so complicated that women would leave them in for months without combining or washing their hair. The lard used to set these hairstyles would spoil over time. Cockroaches, mice, and even rats would build nests in the hair. Women carried a long stick with a claw on the end. The stick allowed them to scratch inside their hair without disturbing their hairstyle. By the 18th century, wigs were used by almost everyone in Western Europe who was involved with the royal courts and certain professions. The wigs were part of a uniform for doctors, lawyers, judges, and members of the church. These wigs were often made from horse hair, which was stiff and thick but was also cheaper than human hair. Even when the large, curled, powdered wigs fell out of fashion, these professionals continued to wear them in public. To this day, judges and lawyers in the United Kingdom court system wear wigs as parts of their uniforms. Topis came into fashion during the 18th century too. While still curled and powdered, they were more cooler and lighter to wear. Full wigs were extremely hot and also quite heavy. By the 1950s, many people in Europe had stopped wearing wigs. Common people often saw them as a luxury which only the rich could afford. Some people collected old wigs and sold them in the streets for small sums of money. People brought them to use as floor mops and polishing rays. Big wig. The earliest known use of the word big wig, meaning an important person, was in the 1703 English journal called English Spy. The richest and the most powerful people at the time wore the biggest and fanciest wigs. Here today, gone tomorrow. As technology improved in the 20th century, people began to create wigs out of nylon threads. Nylon resembled human hair but cost much less. It also allowed for a larger choice of colors, which gave people an even greater variety of looks and looks. Today, people continue to wear wigs for many reasons. They wear them to appear fashionable and stylish or simply to change their appearance. People who are bald or losing their hair wear wigs to boost their self-esteem. Performers such as clowns or actors might wear wigs as parts of their costumes. Styles have changed depending on the fashion of the time, but whether they are long or short, fancy or plain, wigs have played an important role in human history. Who knows that the next great fashionable hairstyle will be? Hair donation. Certain illnesses cause their hair loss in some people. Doctors may prescribe wigs for these patients. Wigs may help patients feel more positive and respond better to treatment. Today, some people give their long hair to organizations like Locks of Love, which makes wigs for children who have lost their hair.